This is day 1 of the February 97 7-day retreat in Springwater. I forgot to say something last night in the opening talk. About our conventional ways of being with each other, greeting each other in the morning, saying goodbye or good night at night, please and thank you or excuse me. And it's not necessary to engage in that in this retreat. I'm mentioning it in case someone who hasn't been to something like this feels what's going on here. Are people impolite or feeling rejected? All these things that have an opportunity of coming up and being seen to not be true. To be just the product of thinking and habitual remembering, imaging. You may find after a while it's a tremendous relief to be able to be with each other, actually quite closely and directly, without these conventional amenities. It was one of the first deep impressions I had going to a Zen session some 30 years ago. I wasn't working in the kitchen, I was cleaning up the house, emptying baskets, and someone stood in front of the sink under which there was the waste basket. And without needing to say anything, the person moved aside. I opened the closet, deposited the papers, closed it. The person moved back to washing the beans. Very intimate communication or communion, without words or politenesses, which have their place and not being condemned or judged. So how wholeheartedly can one enter into this way of being here? Not getting what one is used to in the beginning, on the surface level, and watching with interest what all comes up within, and not taking it too seriously. Maybe at times even humorously. How the mind keeps spinning and spinning and spinning the story of me and you, and how we live in that rather than the plain facts of what? Being here from moment to moment. Simple. Unadorned. Our first talk of every retreat is about a new kind of listening and looking at this whole phenomenon of creating authority, assuming authority, or rejecting authority. Questioning whether there needs to be any authority in what we're doing here. And if our relationship is not one which involves authority in one way or another, what is it? What is it based on? What does it come out of? Relating together. You and me. In talking about a new kind of listening, let us be clear from the outset that we're not just talking about listening with the ears, even though the ears participate in perception, as does this entire organism, eyes and skin and nose and mouth. Last week we had a talk here. There was a woman with her husband who was signing to her all the time. She was deaf. We sat together during brunch, and I just wished I was able to do this signing. Such a marvelous way of communicating. She looked so happy, so open, so in touch. I forgot to ask her, via her husband, whether it disturbed her when I'm talking about listening. I don't know how much I did talk about listening, but it comes up, listening, looking. Looking when one is blind, how does one look? How does one listen when one is deaf? Are we totally dependent on the sense organs for the immediacy of relationship, contact, being here together? So when the word listening is used, it does not just mean hearing with the ears. When looking or seeing is used, it does not just mean seeing and looking with the eyes. There is available for human beings a deeper, wholesome perception, which involves all of the senses open, functioning together. And yet also beyond sense perception, wholeness of perception, in touchness, which one does not know where it is located, cannot find a locality for this whole perception. So, how do we listen to each other in our normal life? And listen to a lecture that is being given, because we call it a talk here. Sometimes abroad, when I talk, they don't have a simple word, they call it a lecture. But it doesn't matter what the word is. How do we listen to someone giving a talk this morning? Can we sort of turn the mirror inward, as it were? Detecting here and there, maybe hesitantly in the beginning, furtively, quickly, and then it's gone, and yet detecting that there is quite a bit of expectation manifested throughout this body of what this talk is going to be like, what one would like it to be, or what one would not want it to be. Expectation only being one of the factors operating in our moment-to-moment listening, expecting to hear something, and the mind therefore vibrating with expectation.
just the mind. There is no such thing as the mind separate from the body. Mind being thought systems, memory systems, instantly engaging the whole organism. That's why it's so difficult to listen openly to each other, to a talk. The organism vibrating with all kinds of stuff. One's knowledge, one's memories, one's desires, what one would like to be, would like someone else to be. Fears. Fears. If there are fears in the mind, is it at ease to listen? To listen to the fears that come up as something is said about a wholesome perception, maybe that rattles one. What is that? I don't know what it is. Maybe I should have it, but I don't have it. Maybe others have it. And the mind jumping back and forth on its doubts and questions, agitating the body, misses what is being said. Inevitably. It's not judged. We're not saying it's bad. We're trying to bring it to light, to ease it into the open, where it can be seen and lose its power. Because the energy of seeing is stronger than the energy of fearing or expecting or wanting. So can one ask oneself, how do I listen? Because most of our difficulties in relationship stem from misunderstandings, not having heard each other accurately. It's amazing how one picks up something that a person may not have said because of one's fear that this is what he or she might have said or could have said. This incredible yearning to be loved and accepted, seen as being good and accepted as being right. Such yearning for that, which affects the senses of perception by closing them down, tensing them, narrowing them in an amazing way. And please, from the beginning, these things are not said so we know what not to do or what to get rid of. Not holding, these are not said to hold up something negative, undesirable, wrong. Because with that, there are already attitudes gelling in the body-mind against oneself, because all of these things happen in oneself. Not listening properly because one is so full of irritation or fear or expectation. It happens in human beings like you and me. We don't talk about it in order to blame it or find fault with it, reject it, try to get rid of it, but to bring it to light, which is always an amazing thing when it happens. We all know that when the sun breaks through the clouds, everything looks beautiful, that is illuminated. It looks bright and clear. Once we were driving through the desert, trying to get to the west coast, this Mojave Desert. Endlessly straight highway. And we were wondering what were these jeweled shoulders into infinity, just sparkling. Left and right of this infinite highway. And coming closer, it was beer can upon beer can. Garbage sparkling in the light. So, can one wonder with interest, some interest, maybe not an all-consuming interest. We're not expecting of each other, but just wonder about what imagery one has of Toni giving the talk, and wonder whether maybe this imagery about her interferes with listening. For better or worse. Sometimes people tell me in a group, people seem to listen more to you than to others. If I say something, somebody will say, people don't listen the way they listen when you say something. Well, what is this kind of listening that gives more importance to one person than to another? Or less importance to one person than another, that already blocks and stops up the doors of perception. This value so automatically assigned by knowledge and memory to this person and that person. Knowledge, assessment of the character, of the background of the person. Their language, their clothes, their way of expressing themselves, sound and voice, all seem to form a picture in the mind what it must be all about this person. And does the listening adjust to this picture formed? Why listen to him? Oh, I have a feeling what he's going to say, or she. And that's not what interests me, or that's not what I like to hear. And likewise with someone, one attaches importance to sort of uncritically adopting what is being said. Because by listening to a talk such as this, I don't just mean listening to the words that are being said, the expressions that are being used, but to wonder sincerely whether what this person is saying, what Toni is uttering, is really so. Not accepted because she has some reputation, or rejected because of a different reputation. But to wonder, to something set up in oneself that wants to find out whether this is so. Because one may see right away it is so, or may feel very clear, or maybe be very clear that it is not so. But most of the time we either reject or accept uncritically, blindly. Not listening with the interior vacant and open to examine as the words are spoken whether what is said can really be seen to be so or not so. That's not easy, but it comes with time. Sometimes it's immediately there. I can never postulate that there has to be time that it takes, that one has to learn this. Who knows? I don't. It may take time, it may not take time. Partly depends how one clings to all kinds of ideas or systems or other traditions that say it differently or have different structures. Or is there a freedom from that, at least at the time of listening here? Suspending all the stuff that one is normally attached to and creating space, like moving the furniture out of the house. Talking about that, we once had our furniture reupholstered and refinished. And the man came and took all the stuff away, and we wondered why we ever had the stuff and why we should take it back. It was so marvelous to have all this space. Because after a while the back aches. Want to have an easy chair or something. Are you asking, how do I do that? Empty the inside so that I can be looking while listening, questioning while attending, discovering while attending. How to do that, I don't know. It happens for human beings in an amazing way. That is beyond explanation. Although I'm sure there are corresponding physical states, if they would be measured or detected. So, if something doesn't make sense that is being said, or not just it doesn't make sense, it seems so wrong, or it seems so scary, or incomprehensible. What's the response of the mind in the presence of that? Fighting it, resisting it, spinning out some kind of scenario about the person who's saying it, about the place where it's being said, or about oneself. Or can what is being initially rejected be wondered about nonetheless, given a chance? Carrying it around the brain is very helpful in that it can carry around things even if it doesn't understand them, albeit wanting to resolve this thing. Brain has a tremendous urge, in-programmed urge to create understanding and order, even if it is a false order, a false understanding. It doesn't like unfinished business. Brings it up and works on it, even though one may be sleeping or doing something else. I remember many years ago reading things that I just absolutely did not understand, and yet the brain kindly stored it. It didn't battle it, because something must have resonated somewhere as possibly being true, or at least worthy of wondering about.
So the usual reflex of trying to get rid of it or fight it, deny it, was in abeyance. The statement was left hanging in there, cropping up every once in a while, particularly when it was very clear what it meant, what it was pointing at.
So how do we listen to each other? Not just to a person who's giving a talk in a retreat, to each other in a group meeting for which we have quite a bit of opportunity in this retreat. How quietly can the mind be in listening and attending? Quietly meaning suspending its assumptions. Well, the assumptions must somehow be seen. Totally unseen assumptions just operate mechanically, automatically, habitually. But in a meeting, one-on-one or in groups, that is the function of it, to draw attention to our underlying assumptions and blockages. And if someone draws attention to it, again will one go with the habitual reflex of defending against it and watching it in amazement as defensiveness expresses itself, not wanting to be questioned or possibly proven wrong. There's tremendous need to identify with our statements and assumptions and opinions. Amazing. Because that's what all it is assumptions, opinions. That's not what I am. And yet this is how it is defended and protected, as though this is life and limb. So, in listening to each other, can there also be listening to oneself? In a new way, non-judgmental way? Hearing and wonderment, how the words come out, how they sound, the tone of them, the music of them, or the percussion of them. Times the bristling of them. And not immediately defend it. Yeah, this is because of such and such, and what you remind me of, but to listen. Become intimate with this functioning organism, which is a microcosm, cosmos, of quote unquote the world, the society, humanity. Because what is discovered and observed and understood in oneself is understood in everyone else. Because we all function very similarly, even though there are differences. So how are we listening to ourselves? A constant rescue operation? Trying to put Humpty Dumpty together again? Protect, defend, keep intact. Always on the watch, on the lookout for danger to this self, conglomerate of identifications and images. Can that be listened to, discovered from moment to moment, in the sunlight? Again, this is such a marvelous learning when it takes place. No need to blame, no need to find fault. These are just conditioned reflexes of the human mind, deeply programmed into the system. Who did it? Revenge, punishment. opposite, adoration, admiration, praise. So because it's so deeply ingrained, it's so difficult to see ourselves. We're so afraid of being punished, outcast, unloved. And yet it happens to all of us. Sometimes comes like a real revelation to people in a group to see that others have very similar problems. One was so isolated, thought nobody was quite as this or that way as I am. So in listening to oneself and each other, the interior sort of spaciously open, not just crammed with fears and judgments, because those can be seen and illuminated. Does one become what has been called self-absorbed? What people tell me, I don't know whether I like what you guys are doing there, becoming so self-absorbed, always watching yourself. Can there be too much watching? Somebody just asked the other day. Yes, there can. It all depends what the quality of this watching is. Is it watching in order to get rid of this, condemn it, hide it? Or is it happening effortlessly in this vast field of attention in which right now the sun is shining? Breath is flowing. Some distant sounds, maybe of motors, machines. Here and there, a crow cawing. It's not just openness to all of the manifestations of oneself, but everything that's there, with no need to hold on to anything or reject anything. If any questions come up about what is said in the talk, and you remember them, it's all right to jot them down if you want to. Bring them to a meeting. I may not remember, I will not remember verbatim what I say or what you said. But if the problem itself wants to come out and be discussed and looked at, we can start right there. We don't have to remember how we put it. This being is infinitely resourceful and creative right now to look and listen and understand. We will end here for today.